Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. We're getting down to D-Day now, 12 games left, and some very interesting teams at the top of the championship, not least of all Sheffield United. And I am very, very happy today, because I'm a big fan of his, to be joined by Ben from the Blades Pod, and we're going to try and figure out how Sheffield United got here and what the hell is going to happen next. Ben, how you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Very honoured to be invited onto your show. That's very kind words there, and yeah, a big fan of your own work as well, Ben. So yeah, thanks very much for having me on.
Oh, very kind of you to say. Just tell me, before we start, tell me a bit about the podcast. I know probably anyone who's about to watch two guys talk about Sheffield United probably already subscribes to your podcast, but I've got a lot of championship followers here, and I think your podcast is quite a good listen just from a general general championship view. Tell me about when the show drops and Mr. Blaze Analytic as well.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, I think it started probably about 18 months ago. I started it basically. I just fancied trying my hand at podcasting. You know, I had a little bit of spare time between some work projects and thought this looks fun. I'd been kind of thinking about doing it for a little while. And I realised there was no Sheffield United podcast existing, so I thought it's kind of a nice niche there if I want to actually give this a go. And yeah, so I put together the first episode, was kind of stunned that a couple of hundred people downloaded it. That was, a nice encouraging start, I thought. And then, yeah, it just went from there, really. I mean, the thing I tried to, I guess my goal starting out was to basically have something that sits opposite the kind of knee-jerk reaction, fan phone-in kind of thing. I mean, obviously there's a place for that as well, and you get a lot of very interesting takes out of that. But I wanted it to be something that, like, I spent a couple of days sort of thinking about the match, about trying to process my feelings on it. Did a bit of analysis as well, and then basically try and come in with like a slightly more considered, objective take. I mean, obviously, I'm very much a fan at heart. I'm very heat at the moment when I'm actually at the match, and in the immediate aftermath as well. So I think it's probably good for my own like mental well-being to be like, let's just take a couple of days, think about what this means, and then come in with some actual analysis. But yeah, I've had a very regular guest on my podcast who is Jay Blades Analytic, who again I'm sure many of your viewers and followers on Twitter will be aware of. But yeah, he's a very regular guest. He's kind of I think definitely elevated the discussion into more of a statistical, analytical perspective as well, which is something I'm interested in. He's very much a whiz with numbers generally, so yeah, I'm able to kind of piggyback off a lot of the great work he does. But yeah, had some other guests on as well, and yeah, it's just been growing and growing ever since, really.
Brilliant. So it's at Blades Pod on Twitter. Is there any underscore or anything in that?
No, just at Blades Pod.
So that will get Ben, and Jay is at Blades Analytic, isn't he? Well worth following both of these guys. Just on the analytics thing, I always remember watching George Burley's Ipswich, and there was never any numbers to. We all knew that we were really good, and there was never any numbers to. And then we would not get promoted at the end of every season. And now we have all these numbers with the XG and the possession and the heat maps and everything, where the things that do not meet the eye test you can actually see. So I think it's really great, and I think it's only gonna grow. So we're here to talk about Sheffield United, who are on the verge of possibly, let's touch wood every time we say this,
Yeah.
something very, very special. So I want to look at how this happened and what you think is going to happen next. For my sins, the Blades only really came on my radar October 2017 when they first played Ipswich after the promotion. So I want to go back a little bit further, just one season back further, just so if anyone's watching who kind of the whole Paul McCartney 7 years to become an overnight success type thing, so people know that this is not a fluke. So I'm going to go back 8th of May 2016, and a Blades team containing Billy Sharp and Chris Basham loses 2-0 at home to Scunthorpe. The last day of that season, the Blades finish 11th in League One, and 4 days later, Chris Wilder replaces the very David Brentish Nigel Adkins. Tell me where the club were on Wilder's arrival and these fallow years in League One.
In a very bad way. I'm not sure you saw me there, but when you brought that game up, I made a face because yeah, that was pretty low. I mean, to be fair, we spent 6 years in League One, including obviously the 1 year with Wilder in charge, and yeah, the previous 5 years up to that were just sort of. I think they did get progressively worse. I mean, we almost got promoted at first attempt.
Three teams got over 90 points. That's incredible on that first season. Yeah, you were unlucky then,
Yeah,
weren't you?
obviously missed out to Sheffield Wednesday, which is a kick in the teeth in itself. Missed out kind of because of Ched Evans, going to jail, which I won't go into. But it was like as a fan, you're like, what? How did that happen? This guy scored almost 40 goals. In fact, I think he might have actually scored 40 goals that season. But yeah, it kind of got. We went through some managers who didn't really know what they were doing. Things just got progressively worse. We had another playoff final defeat kind of thrown in there as well. And then, yeah, that Nigel Adkins season you mentioned, I mean, I think we finished 11th that year. We'd invested a fair bit of money as well, I think. I mean, you have no divine right to be at any stage of the league table or in any league. You have to earn it. But 11th in League One is not really good enough for the amount of money we were spending, the size of our crowds, the infrastructure we have, etc. That was a low. The reaction to losing that Scunthorpe game was brutal, to be honest. I mean, you know how on the last home game of the season you have the sort of I would say the sort of lap of honour or anything like that, but it's the lap of appreciation they call it now. But honestly, the abuse that the players and the management got was grim. It was not pleasant at all. So yeah, no surprise to see him get sacked. Yeah, we're in a really, really low place. And yeah, then in comes Wilder, and there's some question marks about him. I mean, he had a fantastic track record at Northampton, obviously, but never managed at League One level before. I think was the kind of the main thing that was sort of I guess thrown at that appointment. But obviously a former United player, Sheffield United fan, he'd been a ball boy here and all this kind of thing. So you kind of think, well, this could go well. And then it actually didn't go well at all for the first 3 or 4 games, which is bizarrely quite a common theme actually in all of his seasons. But yeah, I think we were either bottom or in the bottom 3 after I believe it was 4 games. And
Well, let's pick up there, Ben, because my
hmm,
next date on my timeline is 6th of August. So it's 3 months later, and United, as you've mentioned, lose their opening game of the season.
hmm.
But in the team now is Leon Clark, Mark Duffy, John Fleck, and Jack O'Connell. Um, how significant was the early recruitment and this balmy 3-5-2 with centre halves playing up front and getting goals and assists? How soon did that start to materialise? Could you see it straight away, or is it something that's developed?
Not right straight away, but certainly more or less from the point we started winning, which I think was the 4th game. So I'm pretty sure that was sort of 3rd or 4th game was about the time we started playing with the back 3. I went to I think it was the 2nd game of the season. We drew with Rochdale at home. And I remember distinctly thinking, my God, we're actually worse than last year. Like we were really bad in that game. We got a draw, but we looked really, really poor. And then, yeah, that 4th home game, we went a goal down at home sorry, not the 4th home game, the 4th game, went a goal down to Oxford. But then you could just sort of see, actually, hang on, some of these players look really good. I remember watching Mark Duffy for probably only the 2nd time that season and thinking, wow, this guy can really play football, which is not something we've been able to say about United players for 3 or 4 years at least. And yeah, we turned that game around and won. And yeah, it was just the ultimate launch pad, really. Ended up getting 100 points the rest of the way. So yeah, it was. I would say it was kind of evident fairly early on in Wilder's sort of regime, but certainly the first few games as you're getting things sorted out, we're still pretty poor. But yeah, once we got rolling, it really got rolling, and I think we just kind of evolved in that style has kind of evolved just season to season as we've added better players and players that understand the system and what we're trying to do even better, to be honest.
Mm. So you've already mentioned it. I've just had a look at the end of that season 13 wins and 4 draws out of the last 17 games,
Yeah.
100 points, 14 clear of Bolton in second, 27 clear of Millwall in sixth, who were the other team that that went up. Do you put this all down to Wilder that season?
I mean, I think it's the management team. I mean, Wilder's probably the first to acknowledge Alan Knill, the assistant manager, as well, and the effort that puts in. And yeah, I think you do have to put it on the management team. I mean, the players that we've signed have all played brilliantly, almost uniformly, I guess. And I guess the common theme is that most of them were sort of cast off by teams who are now below us, to be honest, whether that's a league below us or below us in the table, they were kind of deemed, if not good enough, then surplus to requirements. A lot of a lot of those teams, and I would suggest that all, if not most of them, are playing a kind of peak that they've never reached in their careers before. And yeah, I think you definitely have to put that on the management team, and I think it is also the system that we play. It's very, there's a lot of kind of complementary relationships within the team that allow players who, other fans may look at and go, well, they're pretty limited. They were rubbish for us. John Fleck's a kind of classic example. He's very, I guess, poorly thought of at Coventry. But, most people would now say that he's one of the better midfielders in the division. United fans would certainly say that. Pretty much any kind of stat or metric you want to look at would say that as well. He's got in the Scotland squad as well now. So, yeah, I think it's the management that have made the players better, if you like, and you couple that with smart recruitment as well, and that's essentially why we are where we are.
So the promotion happens, 100 points, and last season's championship campaign starts. So this only really 2 and 3/4 seasons now. We're exactly 12 games from the end, and a
Yeah.
whole slew of players come in here: Stearman, Lee Evans, Ched Evans, Leonard Lundstrom, Holmes, Hennigan, Thomas Donaldson, Carter Vickers and Blackman on loan. But most interestingly are the two wing backs, Ender Stevens and George Baldock. Looking from the outside, just literally looking down that list, I thought, so did he just look at all his favourite players from league? Because most of them there's only a couple of league championship players. Most of them are League One players who would have played against the Blades or even League Two. Was it a case of bring in a load, stick them on the training pitch and let the cream rise?
I think actually this is probably the one, I would say it's a low point, but I think it's the one point where Wilder had some misjudgment, I guess, or the club kind of made a bit of a misstep in. I don't know. Maybe we just weren't able to spend the amount of money that we needed to kind of upgrade. So most of the players you've mentioned there came in January, I think. So like Evans, Lee Evans, that is, Ryan Leonard, Ricky Holmes, and yeah, it was a mix of players that Wilder's worked with before. In the case of Holmes, or players that we've kind of been chasing for a little while. I mean, Ryan Leonard was sort of rumored to be coming here for about 12 or 18 months, I think. And yeah, none of them really made the impact that we're looking for, I think. And if you contrast that with the business we've done this transfer window, which I'm sure we'll come on to, it's an incredible contrast. But then it is also, we've been backed with a bit more money, I think, which, has kind of been raised from the sale of David Brooks to Bournemouth in the summer. So we had that extra kind of leeway to play with, I suppose. But yeah, it was, I think it was a little bit of a mishmash in terms of trying to. So the big thing, obviously, if nobody's aware of, is when United were doing fantastically at the start of last season and near the top of the league, Paul Coots, central midfielder, was he was essentially running the show for us. We weren't a one-man team, but he was the fulcrum through which everything went. He wasn't the kind of guy that racks up assists. He certainly doesn't rack up goals or anything like that. But our whole system kind of functioned through him. He broke his leg in November, I believe it was, start of November, while we were top of the league. Unfortunately, he's only sort of still feeling his way back to the team, really. And yeah, we did nosedive after that. I mean, we'd had I wouldn't say a fortuitous start to the season, but we'd had a slightly overperforming start to the season. So we're trying to get
12 wins out of the first 17 games. And if I'm right, Coots got injured against Burton, which was the game before you played Fulham. Is that right? Or
yes.
close? Yeah.
Yeah, it is. You're right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because so Fulham's where the nosedive starts, and it's one of those ones where you look at the Championship, 46 games, 3 points for a win. You did lose five, but if you win 12, so it was a really really brilliant start actually. 36 points from the first 17 games, is that
Yeah,
right?
we were top of the league. Like that game against Burton, we won, went back to the top. We'd just beaten Wolves the previous week, I think, or like
Wow.
10 days before, something like that. So yeah, we then went through. I mean, it wasn't like a complete slump, but it was a drop off in standards, and we tried to kind of fill that Coote-sized hole, if you like, in January with players like Lee Evans, who I think was fine. He's doing pretty
I
well
just seen him
for.
play for Wigan last week.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
he's, he's pretty good, but it was a step down, and we kind of saw that the rest of the season as well. So yeah, I think it was a bit of a try and get some players in to see if any of them can kind of replicate what we had there, and unfortunately, the answer was not quite.
When you look at the actual big picture, pre-Fulham, it was 2.11 points per game, which is real. That's Championship form. And then post-Fulham, for the rest of the season, 1.22. So big drop-off. But when you look at it, you come from first in League One to 10th in the Championship. So
Mm,
it's either, depending on how you think of it, it's either a rise of 14 places from the last season or a drop of eight
mm.
from being second. But surely, big picture, when Chris Wilder took over, if you said in 2 seasons' time we'll have accumulated 100 points and we'll finish 10th in the Championship, this is pretty good going, and he's
Oh yeah,
he's setting a high watermark that he's got to attain to at this point, right?
yeah. No. I mean, yeah. Don't misread me. I mean, even at the end of last season, I was like, that was a great season. Even with even if you discount the winning 4-2 at Hillsborough and some of the other great wins we had as well. Over Wolves, we scored a lot of goals that season, particularly in the first part. It was a great season. It was a mild disappointment that we kind of missed out in the playoffs, but part of that was the fact that the playoffs were very close for most of the season, like down the stretch. I mean, I know we finished 10th in the end, but and I think it was maybe 4 or 5 points off it in the end. But down the stretch, we were ahead in a ridiculous amount of games. It was something like seven of our last 8 games we were ahead going into the last 15 minutes, and we ended up getting like 6 or 8 points or something like that. And you think, if you just hold out in those games, if that 6 or 8 points becomes 15 points, suddenly you finish fifth in the league, and you're in the playoffs, and who knows what happens. So yeah, it was it was a great achievement, I think, in that first year relative to budget. Yeah, relative to what like resources we had, etc. So yeah, unfortunately, we've just we've taken the next step. It seems this season.
So we get to this season, which could be the potential glorious season, and they go for it a little bit more because in comes another lone goalkeeper, which I quite like that model. I remember the Moneyball thing said goalkeepers are underrated, and if you can borrow one that's better than you could buy, then that's a
Mm.
good thing. David McGoldrick, who I know all about, which was a gamble that's paid off. John Egan for a club record, and the brilliant Ollie Norwood on a loan from Brighton. I just looked; those four have started 34, 33, 31, and 26 games this
Mm.
season. So he's basically signed the nucleus of a team. That's over 100, 110 or something appearances between them this season. Talk to me about that recruitment going into this season, especially the fee paid for Egan as well.
So I was very high on pretty much all of those signings, to be honest. I mean, McGoldrick was I guess, a low risk, high ceiling gamble. I've seen him a few times for Ipswich and thought, looks like a really good player. It's just I was well aware of his kind of injury history, if you like. So, but free transfer, you think what's the worst that can happen? He just doesn't play very often. It's not such a big deal. But the other ones, I mean, they addressed areas that we were quite weak in last season, I think. So Egan was the big one. We did lack this a kind of stopper in central defence, if you like. Someone who isn't going to be bullied aerially, who's going to stand up against teams like, I don't know, like Cardiff and Millwall did the previous season. Essentially were able to kind of load the box, and we had difficulty with that. He has come in and been fantastic. I mean, it's not like a world-beating central defender, in the way, say, Harry Maguire was and now kind of is, if you like, at Leicester. But for the amount that we paid, I mean, we paid money for a top Championship defender, and that's exactly what he's proved to be. The other one is Norwood, so he was signed on a loan basically to get round the transfer window. So he joined on a permanent transfer in January. Just one of the best players I think I've ever seen play for United. His range of passing is unbelievable. I've never seen anything like it in a United shirt. His ability to basically spread the ball all over the pitch. Whether it's his short passing or these kind of ridiculous 50-yard first time outside of the foot efforts are just unbelievable. And then you throw in his set piece delivery as well and his crossing ability. He's just been an incredible signing. I can't believe he only cost $2 million. I don't think I will ever be able to get my head around that. I've no idea why that was how much.
I was at your game against Stoke, and I swear he played one of the best passes I've ever seen, because he kind of was over to the right, and it was, like you said, first time. And I think he likes the fact he's got a wing back 50 yards away from him, doesn't he?
It helps, yeah.
And he span it round, and it bounced in front of, I can't remember who it was to, presumably, might have even been a forward, but I suspect it was to Stevens. But yeah, we're quite lucky in the Championship. There's a few absolutely brilliant centre midfielders in there.
Definitely.
I love watching centre midfielders, and Norwood is definitely up there. I think when all the Player of the Year stuff goes, I think it's between Leitner and Norwood, whoever finishes higher out of. Do you know what I mean? I think the narrative kind of, and Sharp and Pookie, that type of thing, the narrative kind of kicks in there. And another fast start, 8 wins in 12. With Norwood, Fleck, and Duffy in midfield. Fleck takes a little bit of more of a supporting role rather than the leading man. Sharp and McGoldrick, us Ipswich fans are watching in amazement as week after week McGoldrick not only does not get injured, but scores and
he is such a good player. Did you know
we all knew he was an excellent player. It was just, I mean, all the conspiracy theorists now say it was the commute from Nottingham to Ipswich and him refusing to
I've
move.
seen that.
I also think it helps the way Sheffield United play, and that he played under Mick McCarthy for 5 years, which is ball into the channels, hold it up.
Yeah, which isn't really his game. But I'm stunned by how good he is, how good a footballer he is. I mean, from a very early stage watching him, it's like, wow, this guy can really play. I mean, I mentioned Mark Duffy earlier. He is the other one that I just love to watch him play football. His intelligence, his ability with the ball is brilliant. Unfortunately, he actually had quite a slow start goal scoring wise. I mean, he missed some. There was about a 5 or 6 game run where he missed some brilliant chances. And to be fair, some of them were like fantastic saves, but there were other ones where it was like 2 yards out and it ends up getting cleared off the line. And it became a bit of a thing among United fans. I think it was like, oh, McGoldrick, he just can't, he's this striker that looks amazing, but he can't actually score. And then as kind of, I guess the more balanced among us expected, that kind of unlucky run, if you like, ended, and suddenly he scored 6 goals in the next 5 games or something like that. And, with some brilliant finishes thrown in. But yeah, he's a pleasure to watch. I'm so pleased we signed him. So yeah, just sort of added so much more to our team.
And just kind of adds to the narrative of Ipswich having the worst, any possible thing that can wind up Ipswich fans this season.
Yeah, sorry.
So only 3 wins in the next 9 after that fast start. And on December 14th, I went to Bramall Lane for the YouTube channel, and it was Sheffield United 1, West Brom 2. And I watched it, and I felt quite depressed because I thought, and a lot of Blades fans agreed with me in the comments on the video, I thought, what more can Wilder do here? They're consistently up the top of the table. They play really lovely football. For pound, his recruitment is brilliant. But how the hell can Sheffield United compete with 45 million 1 year of parachutes, 31 the next? And I came away sort of quite depressed. And a lot of Blades fans were saying, well, this is it. While this is happening, it's going to be very hard to go. But how did you feel after that game? Do you remember that one?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I was a little bit flat, but I completely get what you're saying there, and that is definitely true to an extent. But I did also come out of it being like, it hasn't changed my opinion of the team too much. I mean, the thing that we talk about a lot on the podcast is advanced metrics like expected goals and the amount, basically how many good chances do United create and how many good chances do United concede. That's obviously you pay attention to the results. That's the thing that makes us happy or sad. But you kind of have to look at the process behind it as well. And all through the season, United create fantastic chances and they don't tend to concede many good chances themselves. Ergo, they will win more games than they lose if they play like that over a long period of time. And that West Brom game was another example to me. I mean, yes, we definitely lost a grip of the game in the second half. And, West Brom, I would say, won fairly comfortably in the end. We weren't able to kind of get back in the game. But in that first half, we went a goal up. We had a couple of other really good chances as well. If you stick one of those away, probably win the game. And the narrative is very different. I just think, to me, I didn't fall into that narrative trap of like, here is what we're up against. West Brom obviously have Premier League players. They have the Premier League parachute payments. We can't possibly compete with this. I kind of felt like, okay, there'll be isolated games like this one where you come up against a team that has, a couple of players that are beyond anything you have and they produce a moment of magic. Or in that game, we actually had two sort of defensive mistakes, I think, that led to those goals. But, you come up against a couple of teams where a moment of magic kind of settles it and you hold your hands up and go, okay, they have slightly better players than us. But over the course of the season, as we've seen, our performance levels have kind of been sustainable. They have sustained. We've kept creating chances. We don't concede many, and that's why we keep winning more games than we lose or draw, I suppose. So yeah, that was a little bit down after that one, but not by no means crushed or felt like, oh, that's it. This game's just the slap in the face, the reality check kind of thing. And as it happens, we've only lost one game since that point. So yeah, it's my non-fears have been founded, I suppose.
Yeah, and we'll get to that. I was wrong with my assertion there because we get to Boxing Day, and between Boxing Day and the 12th of January, United win 4 straight games, announce Kieran Dowell as kind of competition for Mark Duffy. Gary Medine comes in, which is a guy that made a difference in a promotion battle last year for Cardiff. There's one loss to Swansea, then a really good draw away at Norwich. Then, the one that really put me over the top, last day of the transfer window, and Scott Hogan, I know Villa had been trying to move him about, but it's another good championship forward. Talk to me a bit about January, because you end it in 3rd place, but I get the feeling someone looked at this and thought, hang on a minute, right? There's no Wolves here. There's no Newcastle. Any one of the top 4 or 5, even Borough, there's two automatics and a reasonable chance in playoffs. We can't spend 10 million on Patrick Bamford, but we can offer Gary Medine a lovely big bonus if we get promoted. And this attacking roster just seems absolutely loaded now. Tell me about January.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't think we could have done any more than we did. And what's better is, I was pretty high on those signings when they joined, but we've already seen the impact, particularly of Medine and Dowell. I mean, Hogan's actually barely played. He got a start in the 4-0 win against Reading a couple of weeks ago. And it was a bit unlucky not to score and actually looked very, very good, like another option. It may well be that we don't see much of Hogan the rest of the season if Sharp, McGoldrick and Medine kind of carry on their form, I suppose. But yeah, we added what we didn't have last season, which was not only depth in attacking areas, but also a change of style. Dowell, yes, you're quite right, brought in as kind of competition for Duffy, but is also quite a different player to Duffy. And that's why we've seen him used in a lot of these away games as well. I mean, against Villa was the first kind of step for him to be like, this is something we didn't have last season, a player that can kind of run at defense, drive into space, can kind of create something out of nothing. He'll try difficult passes, try difficult shots, just basically gives a bit of dynamism that we didn't have through the rest of the team. Duffy, I love him, phenomenal player, plays in a slightly more controlled, I would say slower pace, but he basically helps us retain possession, shift defenses about, slide these kind of through balls, that kind of thing. Whereas, Dowell's more like just go for the jugular kind of player. Medine, again, completely different to what we had. United obviously have this physical reputation that's I don't think we'll ever lose from the Warnock or indeed Dave Bassett years, I
Howard
suppose.
Kendall as well. I remember some
Well, yeah,
ding dongs
quite.
under Howard Kendall. Yeah.
Yeah, but we yeah, very true actually. We don't really have a physical presence up front, and now we do. Now we have someone where I mean, take the Sheffield derby, the last one for example. Wednesday just packed the box, and by the end of the game, it was just heading practice for their defenders. They were just heading everything away. Now we've got someone who is a real physical handful, and again we've already seen that impact. He maybe wasn't so effective against Norwich, but he was extremely effective at Aston Villa. Had a field day against Reading the other week. We saw a kind of glimpse of it home against Bolton as well, and it just looks like a really good signing. And yeah, contrast with the previous January. I mean, these players, they're not our players; they're just on loan. So you lose the value of the asset, I guess. But yeah, in terms of like pushing our chips in to try and get the most we can out of this season, I really don't think we could have asked for anything more than this at all. We're giving ourselves the best possible chance with our resources, I think.
I was at the Villa game, and what I really noticed is when I've seen Blades play before, it's been very much a case of right, we'll work the centre half forward, and here comes Duffy, and right, we're going to get 3 or 4 across, and right, can we now create a chance? Whereas,
Yeah.
right, okay, here comes Baldock. Oh, let's go to Medine straight away now, and
Mm,
I keep getting asked on my channel. I've seen 2 masterful performances this season. One was Pablo Hernandez for 25 minutes in the second half of a Leeds game, and the
mm,
other was Billy Sharp scoring a hat trick exclusively with his brain from
yeah.
2 yards out. Was just, and when the third one went in, and you're watching the play, and you think, okay, this guy's ended up with the ball 1 yard from goal, and this is not luck. This is not a
No, no.
coincidence. So yeah. But speaking of that little run of games, so 5 games, 4 wins and a draw, and that collapse. You should have won that game by
Oh yeah,
miles.
yeah,
Yeah. Um,
yeah.
Off the back of that superb away win against rivals West Brom, second position. We must say we're recording today. Leeds play tonight, so it may well be that Sheffield United dropped to third temporarily. I just had a look at the run-in. 12 games left. The 6 at home look all right. Only
Yeah.
one top 6 team. If Sheffield United go up, it looks like if they play well away from home, they can do it. Sheffield Wednesday, Leeds, Preston, that's a gnarly away game. That's
Tough
not
game,
easy.
yeah.
Birmingham,
Birmingham.
yeah, Hull and Stoke maybe a bit easier in
Mm.
in the run-in there. How do you see these final games playing out and that balance between easier home games and more difficult away games, and maybe, like you've already alluded to, the use of Dowell and Medine away from home specifically?
Yeah, I mean, I do think it'll be hard. I mean, as much as I'm being very complimentary and full of praise for how our season's gone, which is, I think, fully deserved, even if we end up finishing third and getting knocked out in the first round of the playoffs, God forbid. But yeah, I do think it'll be hard. There are some tough games, but then the thing is, I sort of looked at this about 7 or 8 games ago. I looked at the average points needed to make the playoffs in the last 10 years. And it was something like, I think it was about 75 or something like that. And I looked at how many points we had then, and it was like, there's no way we don't make the playoffs from here. Like we would have to lose 12 of our last 15, 16 games to not make the playoffs. It's just not going to happen. And I also had a quick look at how many points you needed typically to get automatically promoted as well. And I think it was about 85 points was like the average amount that the third place team had got each season. So add 1 point on. So call it 86 points or something like that. At that point, I thought that's a stretch. Like there's no way United can get to that. I just can't see it. It's too many tough games coming up. Since then, we've been through Norwich away, drawn, Aston Villa away, drawn. I know Villa are down the table a bit, but that's a tough game, whichever way you look at it. Drawn and should have won that one. We've beaten West Brom. We've beaten Middlesbrough at home. And suddenly, that kind of 86-point target doesn't seem unachievable by any stretch of the imagination. So I'm much more confident now than I was. I think the last 3 or 4 weeks, even with that, the funny thing with that Villa game, as sickening as it was, I genuinely felt afterwards more confident about automatic promotion than I did before the game, because we turned up, we were absolutely brilliant. Villa didn't have a single sniff until they won their first corner in the 84th minute, I think, which they ended up scoring from. That was their first corner, and they only scored because our goalkeeper kind of flapped it, and then there was another mistake, and it snowballed from there, which happens, I suppose. But I came out of that game going, even though we've drawn and it feels like a sickening defeat, I feel more confident that we could get promoted now because we went into that game and just did our stuff and absolutely ran the show, scored 3 goals, should have won probably 99.9% of the time from that position. So yeah, I'm feeling fairly confident. I mean, we will definitely drop points, of course. I mean, but the way that we're playing, it seems now we can go to West Brom and win, which suggests that we can go to Leeds and win, which maybe I wouldn't have thought 3 or 4 weeks ago. And then you look at the home games, and we've basically brushed aside every team that's been sort of mid-table or lower at home this season. I think there's only Wednesday and Stoke maybe out of maybe the bottom half that we haven't beaten at home this season. We just generally take care of business against those teams. So yeah, we're in a fantastic position. We're giving ourselves, like I say, the best possible chance, I think, to kind of steal in there into the top 2. And if we did, I think you'd have to say it was well deserved.
Yeah, very, very interesting. In terms of the points, I've been saying for ages now, maybe 3 or 4 months, that I don't think it's going to be a super high total. You always look at 2 points per game, and I think if Norwich continues on and don't get any injuries to Pukki or Buendia, then they could possibly do that. But that has no bearing on the second place total, and I think it could be even lower. I've seen Leeds and West Brom both a few times, and although Leeds can hit a level for 15 minutes in a game that nobody else in the division can hit, they're not as consistent as Norwich and Sheffield United. And West Brom, I totally agree with Jay on your podcast, is a very, very good collection of players with an inexperienced manager from
no sort of discernible system or style, which is very much what we're all about, I suppose.
Yeah, so I think 85, 84, that would be low for a second place, but hey, we will see how it pans out. You talked about the kind of potential things that can happen. Obviously, automatic would be incredible, and I agree with you. The only other 2 options now are playoff win or playoff defeat. Let's pick the worst of those, playoff defeat. What happens to Wilder and to the club? I know this guy doesn't look like Frank Lampard and doesn't come from like Portugal or something like that, but surely now someone takes a look and thinks, right, a 3-year contract with this guy would be a good move if we can take him away. What's the scenario if you do not go up?
So this is like a constant. It's actually become a bit of a meme among United fans. Every time a job becomes available, it's like Wilder's odds for this job have just plummeted. This kind of thing, and there's definitely been some real panic that he was going to leave us to join other teams, particularly over the summer, I suppose. I never really felt that he would, without any kind of insider knowledge, just on the fact, you can see that he is building something here over, and I emphasize building. It's a gradual process over a few seasons, and we are improving season by season. The league table speaks for itself in that regard. So I didn't feel that would happen. In the summer, I'm sure if we didn't get promoted, other teams in the Premier League may take a look at him. But at the same time, we've kind of secured a lot of our current squad on longer term contracts now, which signals to me that he has absolutely no intention of leaving. Jack O'Connell just signed a new contract the other day. Sharp signed one the previous week. Enda Stevens did as well. Basham signed one recently. McGoldrick signed one recently. Then your other kind of key players, Egan and Norwood, have only just joined recently. So you would feel they're going to stick around regardless of what division we're in. So I'm not particularly worried about that. In a strange way, Wilder's kind of nuggety Yorkshireness might count against him a little bit. You alluded to it a bit there. He hasn't got the cosmopolitan style of Frank Lampard, who's obviously played in the Champions League in the last 10 years and is a media darling, quite justifiably, I suppose. That's why he's being legitimately linked with potentially being the next Chelsea manager as soon as like 6 months' time, to be honest. And I wouldn't be shocked if he was. I think it'd be a step too far for him at this stage of his career. But yeah, I think Wilder or maybe I'm simplifying things here, but I think Wilder falls into that kind of Sean Dyche category of like, this guy is a very, very talented English manager who's kind of carved his little niche in a northern club, if you like, and that's kind of means that sort of much bigger teams are not really considering. I mean, Dyche should have been managing a kind of top six club by now, surely. I mean, maybe he didn't want to. Maybe he's quite happy with what he's doing there. And yeah, I would imagine my money would be on Wilder still being manager next season, regardless of where we are next year.
Interesting. Two things on that. One is that people like Dyche and Wilder, you can imagine them saying, right, I'm not even going to turn up and do the negotiations. I want 3 years. If you don't guarantee me 3 years, what good is that for my career? And the Premier League clubs, Ranieri's just gone after 16 games and
106 days, I think it was.
Yeah, I'd be a bit hypocritical given Paul Hurst got 14 games earlier in the season to mention that. But oh God, what was the other point I was going to make? Oh, I had two really good points there, Ben. And
You're talking about Sean Dyche, sorry, and
I've completely forgotten that. Oh, players. There's no sexy young English player in the Sheffield United team. So, for example, if Norwich completely fell off, Max Aarons will go for 15 million the day after the season ends. If Leeds fall off, Jack Clark will go for 12. There's not that. Oh, I want to pinch this guy for 10 million.
Yeah. There isn't, and this is very much played to our. This is very much played to our advantage the last couple of years. I mentioned it earlier that we have these players play. They're not fashionable players, as you say. They're not big names, and some of them don't necessarily even look particularly good if you just kind of drill into. If you just watch Chris Basham, for example, playing like right centre back, I mean, he does look like he looks like Bambi on ice sometimes, and he's coming steaming forward with the ball, and you're like, oh my God, is he going to just tread on it and lose it? The next thing you know, he's beaten two men and played a fantastic through ball down the side
last season.
Yeah, exactly. Again, this is why I've been pretty chill as a United fan the last couple of years, because it's like no one's going to sign these players from us because they're not fashionable type players. They're players performing at their peak in our system, and they are all very, very good players. But yeah, I never felt that we'd lose like John Fleck, for example, or that anyone would give us any amount of money that would make it even remotely worthwhile for Duffy, who's in his 30s, for Sharp, obviously, who's going nowhere. I'm sure he'll retire a blade, to be honest. So yeah, that's played to our advantage, keeping this kind of core of the team together and then supplementing it with the new signings this year as well.
Just talk to me quickly about money before we wrap up. I was just having a nice friendly chat with a Norwich fan on YouTube. It was actually friendly, I promise. And we were talking about spend and wage bill and whatnot. And I had a quick look, and obviously we don't get figures, so we're not going to know what this season cost everybody until April 2020. But I'm thinking of a cost of promotion figure, because I was just debating with this Norwich fan that, well, actually, when Norwich came down, their wage bill was 55 million in 16-17. The same year, Sheffield United went up with a wage bill of 6 million. So when you're coming up with a cost of promotion, I'm not having a pop at Norwich. They've obviously cut massively and done a brilliant job this season. And if you took this season in isolation and forgot that Matt Jarvis and Stephen Naismith existed, their figures probably look really, really good. But you mentioned it on your last podcast. Only really like Preston in 10th, Blackburn 15th, Brentford 16th, and then the bottom six who, go figure. The ones who don't spend are all in the bottom six. How big an achievement is this given the spend?
It's unbelievable. I mean, it's just this again is why Wilder should be considered for much higher ranking jobs, I think, than the one he currently has, if you like. It's our recruitment has just been very smart. As I say, we've got the most out of our players, and I think we've just signed players who buy into what we're trying to do. I mean, we have I'm not sure how family friendly a channel is, so I won't use the actual word, but we have a very much a policy of don't sign players who are going to be a personality problem, I guess, which is why the Medine signing caused a little bit of, I guess, controversy among the fan base. But Wilder was very kind of keen to say, nah, we've sat down with this guy. He wants to come here. He likes the fact he played for Wednesday and that, you all booed him and hated him and stuff. He wants to come here and prove a point. And, we've been very kind of keen on that in our promotion. And Sorry, in our recruitment. So I don't know. Maybe that's given us a bit of a an edge in the kind of players that we've been able to sign. But yeah, like you say, just the Championship is a pretty broken division to be in. I mean, it's almost suicide to spend and stay in this division too long. You know, the cherry is obviously you get promoted, and that near suicidal risk is offset by the money you get for the next 3 or 4 years, even if you come straight back down. But yeah, the achievement is unbelievable. Really, I just urge every United fan to kind of appreciate it for what it is. I mean, there is that frustration of like, oh, if only we'd spent a bit more last season in this kind of time, then maybe we'd have got into the
There'll never
playoffs.
be a
Maybe.
season where you can't say that, though, will there?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it points to us being a pretty well-run club, to be honest, despite the kind of ongoing boardroom impasse, I guess, that we have at the moment, which has probably limited us a little bit, but. I would say it hasn't really limited us that much. We've brought in players that we wanted in January. We haven't sold anyone, as you said. New contracts have gone out to key players. So yeah, I try not to be like ridiculously over positive and hyperbolic, I guess, about United, but it's hard not to be at the moment because yeah, everything is just seems to be really well run on and off the pitch.
And to your point about signings coming in and working, I think there's been quite a good bit of evidence the past couple of months in both Norwich and Sheffield United about pattern of play being so much more important in that in Norwich you've seen, okay, in comes Rancic into the midfield, fine, doesn't make a difference. In comes Tribal, now it's Tetty, last week it's McLean. Sheffield United have been rotating, we had Dowell left wing back and Marvin Johnson left wing back and Stevens centre back. But I think the lesson to all of the Championship teams is you set up on a project and stick to it and it seems to be you stick to it for 2 years, and literally because everyone else chops and changes so much, you have this advantage over them. Right, look. So I think we've covered really well how this has happened. So I don't want to put you on the spot and this get clipped by a Sheffield Wednesday fan in 3 months' time. So how do you see it playing out?
The rest of the season? So I still think we will just miss out on the top two. I don't know if I'm like trying to not jinx it there or something or what. I think we are one of the best 2 teams in the league with Norwich, I would say. But I don't know. We do have a tougher run in, I said that before. So you could see us dropping just too many points, basically. Maybe Leeds just get it together. Leeds are not in good form at the moment. I think Norwich will definitely finish top 2. I'm pretty comfortable with that. And I think it'll just be between us and Leeds, to be honest. I'm not too convinced by West Brom. They might go on a bit of a run, I suppose, and they do have quality players for sure. So, maybe that one will come back to bite me. But, yeah, I think, at the start of the season, I didn't expect us to make the playoffs. And, yeah, I'm now like, bring on the playoffs. We have a terrible record. It doesn't even do justice to how terrible it is. Actually, we need a new word inventing for it.
It's even worse than Ipswich's, isn't it?
Most likely. I think
you've lost a load of finals, haven't you?
We've lost 4 finals, yeah. And we haven't scored a goal in any of them either. And the last one went to penalties, and it ended with our goalkeeper missing the decisive penalty.
Sorry, I shouldn't laugh. if you wrote
do you know Huddersfield actually missed their first 3 penalties in that shootout and still won? Wow. So, playoffs are not good with United. But if we're ever going to win a playoff final, surely Wilder is the man to get us to do it. So I'd go into it pretty confident.
What about this for a doomsday scenario, though, Ben? Monday night, Sheffield Wednesday beat you. Leeds have a little run. Sheffield Wednesday 2 points per game for the rest of the season. Blades finish 3rd. Bristol City and Derby continue to crap the bed, and all Sheffield playoff semi-final. Very, very unlikely, but that would be the. I suppose you start looking at 6th position, and nobody wants it at the moment. Streaky Lee's disappearing downwards. Derby don't look at it. Birmingham are going to have a points deduction sometime soon. Forest might even come on some kind of.
I think there is as likely as anyone else. I think there is a big drop off in quality from 4th down. I mean, not to be disrespectful, but I think there is 4 very good teams. Some maybe outperforming the others within that, but then I think I'm not. I'm persistently unimpressed with Middlesbrough. So apologies to any Middlesbrough fans who may be watching this, but every time I've seen Middlesbrough, it's just not impressed me at all. And yeah, that's kind of borne out in our games with them, in certainly at Bramall Lane in the last couple of years as well. So yeah, I don't know. I I'd be stunned if Wednesday make the playoffs. I
Oh,
mean,
I would be
yeah,
too. Yeah,
yeah.
and there's
It's more the thing with that is, and this is the thing I think a lot of fans who are chasing the playoffs do. They look at it in a vacuum as of like, if we can just get level with that team,
yeah,
we're 6 points behind with them six at the moment, and they ignore the like six teams that are kind of in the way and also going for that position.
all taking
So
points off each other. Yeah,
exactly, yeah. So yeah, sixth place. I don't know. I mean, there's still a bit of buzz around Brentford and Preston as potentially getting there. Brentford can't win away, so they're not getting up there at all. I
well,
don't
Preston
think.
are getting closer now.
Yeah, yeah. Preston's the one that possibly could, but generally, I think that whoever finishes sixth, it'll be in that sort of bunch of 4 or 5 teams that's there already. It'll be Bristol City, Derby, Forest, Birmingham. I think.
And
Apologies.
third should beat them over 180 minutes.
Should do, yeah.
Unless Middlesbrough drop down one spot. But then again, like you say, who's coming to go past Middlesbrough and go into fifth? It's just I don't see that happening. Brilliant stuff, Ben. Hopefully, if you're a Blades fan, you probably knew all of this and maybe had it reaffirmed. But I think if you're just a general Championship fan and you don't quite know how this has all happened. I've been keeping an eye on it only since, like I say, October 2017, and I think given, like you say, how broken the Championship is, I think it's a really cool story, and it's been one of the best teams to watch for quite a while. Now, I was told about these centre halves. I didn't believe it for 1 minute, and then here comes Chris Basham, scores the winning goal, exactly as I was told. So, great stuff. Ben, do you want to give one more quick plug for the pod when it comes out and where people can find it?
Yeah, sure. So, the podcast is called Blades Pod. You can find it on SoundCloud, iTunes, and on Spotify now as well. And yeah, you can follow me on Twitter, which is at Blades Pod. With we don't just. I mean, obviously, we mainly talk about United, but we do it in the context of the Championship as a whole, and give some lip service to whoever we're playing that week and whoever we're playing the following week as well. So check it out, particularly if you're a United fan. But I hope you find something to enjoy in it, even if you're not a United fan.
And I'd wholeheartedly recommend, definitely people who watch my channel who are, frankly, we're all Championship nerds and quite proud to admit it, will definitely find some enjoyment out of that podcast. Just one quick shout out. This is a terrible thing to do, but if any Blades fan can get me into Ellen Road on March the 16th, I would love to be there for my channel, but I seem to have missed the boat on tickets. And although I do have
pretty
some
high demand.
Yeah, I do have some Sheffield United loyalty points, but I might have needed to go to about another 400 games, and I only go to about 5 or 6 Sheffield United games per season. So there we go. Ben, thank you again. Keep up the great work. Good luck. Try and enjoy the last 12 games. I haven't been there for a while, but I remember a horrible sicky feeling when Ipswich used to be up there, and the nerves there. So try and enjoy it, and thanks again for coming on.
No, thanks very much for having me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.